We are here with Barrise, and she's from Bahamas, and we are really grateful to have you with us to intersectionalities.org. I would like first to ask you about here, the global platform. Is your first time participating, and so that you are speaking in many panels, and this is great.
Yeah.
How you are navigating, what you are mainly learning from that and sharing as well.
My takeaway so far, what I'm really enjoying about the panel or the global platform is stay on target with the Sendai framework. So I'm here thinking about, okay, what are ways that the Bahamas can really integrate the Sendai framework and what we have so far? How does our new legislation speak to the Sendai framework? What are areas of improvement? So looking at that. But also a lot of the sessions are about use of technology, which is really important. So I'm learning about data gathering and data collection, the importance of data, and working in policy and research. I know how important that is. So I'm here mapping out like, okay, what can we do to increase our data accessibility and all of this for informed decision making.
Terms, how this research supported your community, your government, and institutions, organizations in your country or the region to move on from the situation that it was before and after that?
So I think my research will really help with the national planning and the national agenda for disaster management, because if government has a better idea on what their role is in disaster management and what people expect their commitment to be in disaster management, then that would really empower communities to say, okay, if the government said when I reach to C, they will step in and provide assistance. So I need to make sure that I have A and B in the event that I need C. So I'm fully prepared to do that. And with that, it creates an inclusive approach and a whole of society approach to disaster management, because we really need to depend on each other. We can't just look for outside resources. We have to help each other in the disaster management landscape to be prepared for these new types of disasters.
And something that will stay. And you saw the change from 4 years ago with the situations that happened. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
Yes. So I think 4 years ago, the country itself had a pretty strong system of disaster response. I think our disaster response capabilities were really high because these are things that we constantly experience every year. We're used and familiar to the same type of storms, or the storms having the same type of characteristics. But with climate change happening, we had a terrible storm in 2019 that kind of rocked the country and changed the landscape for the worse, but also for the better in terms of disaster management. So it's unfortunate that something had to happen for us to be like, okay, we really need to work on these other things, because we were just very comfortable and complacent with this one thing. But that storm taught us that it's a necessity and not a luxury to become prepared in disaster management. So post that storm, we were able to say, okay, we need to focus on community preparedness. We need to focus on mitigation strategies. We need to focus on our recovery and rehabilitation skills. It's the full disaster management cycle and not just the one part of it that we were really comfortable with doing.
And there is a layer that is an island as well.
It's an archipelago. So we have multiple islands within the country, populations scattered to rural and urban areas across the country. So allocation of resources and logistics of getting supplies and resources to the other islands as well. And even with hurricanes and storms, it depends. Maybe the hurricane will hit one island, or maybe the hurricane will hit 5 islands at the same time, and having to prepare for that multi-hazard but also multi-island logistical issues.
How you work with underrepresented groups.
I think that's also something that came out of the storm as well. Before my understanding of things is that we knew that an inclusive approach was necessary, but it was more of a compliance checklist, like, oh, you have this stakeholder consultation with this group because we have to, not really taking their considerations in stride and not really incorporating their feedback and considerations, and sometimes not even reaching back out to those communities. It's kind of like a one and done thing. But post Dorian, with our new legislation, I think it's more ingrained within the policy and legislation framework to say we need to involve the local communities. We need to involve the local organizations within our entire disaster management strategies, because like the multi-island component is sometimes it will take a while for resources to reach a certain island. So we need to invest in those communities on the islands to be prepared and wait up until a certain time before more help and resources can be there. So I think the legislation now provides an opportunity for community organizations and local communities and non-governmental organizations to have a seat at the table and not just be a one box checklist. So it's going to be consistent and more accountability within the frameworks as well. We established a non-governmental organization council and disaster risk consultative committees within some of the family islands. And we have to go back to them to give them reports and feedback on updates on what is going on in the main frame of the disaster management policy, and then take their considerations and feedback and integrate them within all of the disaster plans. We have the traditional forms of media. So you have the radio, the newspaper, print, but with social media, and it really depends on the demographic you're trying to reach as well. Because like my grandparents, they read the newspaper all the time, and I'm just like, I don't read the newspaper. I get my information on social media.
Not the printed
not
one.
the printed newspaper, yes, and they expect the actual hard copy printed newspaper, and I'm just like, I can go on the news media's website and get this information. We don't need the paper. So trying to reach these different demographics in the way that they can be fed information is really interesting. So we just have to be really flexible and adaptable to understand that although 5% of the population still reads printed media, you still have to feed that information to the 5%. And then the young people, I'm young, but I'm not a teenager. So everybody's on social media and TikTok. I'm not on social media and TikTok. So speaking to some of the young people in the Bahamas, they're just like, this is just not relatable to us, you know? So I said, what can we do to make it more relatable? They were just like, give us the information through people that look like us. So they're like, we don't want to see old people telling us to be prepared. If you have somebody in my age range that can tell me to be prepared, I'm more likely to listen to them rather than listening to somebody else. So trying to find avenues and ways to not make it relatable, but make it not boring, I would say. Engaging. Yes, engaging is the right word for all demographics, because the older people would be like, they don't want too much noise. And they don't want to hear all the music in the background. And the young people are just like, no, we want to see people dancing and telling we want to jingle, all of these things. So just keeping all avenues of media communication open and available, because you don't know how information is reaching people, but you just know you need to get the information to people. The rollout of the legislation is new. We just started. We just implemented the act, I think, last year, 2024. So we're still in the infancy stages of rolling out the legislation. So we really are working hard for the public awareness campaign of the legislation and empowering communities to know that they have voices and now they have seats at the table where they can tell us, this is what you should do for us to our unique context, and this is what we don't think that you should do, and for it to be truly considered. So right now we are on an education campaign for the legislation so people can be aware that this is the new legislation and this is how we are now doing disaster management in the country, and to empower people to be involved in disaster management. So for instance, we have a youth ambassador program where we're getting young people involved in disaster management and making them more interested in being prepared.
Fantastic. And it changed everything, right? When you have the community on board and it comes from them, it's not the same.
It's not the same, because those communities now feel empowered and they can take ownership in things. And it also helps with the spread of disinformation. So, you know, if communities go to those workshops, those seminars, those town halls, they know exactly who is the face of the organization, who to go to when they have concerns and grievances. And they can say, if somebody else spreads this information, they can say, no, that's not what we heard at this workshop in this community. So it really creates that network and helps build trust between government and the community so they can actually adhere to the new policies and the warnings that may happen.
And I believe that they also, I saw that in many other countries, in Mali, I saw that very strongly. For example, the community feed you back with very concrete information, and then their knowledge, ancestral knowledge as well. They know how things will happen, and they can also warn in different ways how it happened with you guys.
So in our context, it really depends on the island, but sometimes when we have national testing or even roadworks and community roadworks, like just building the ground up. Communities will say, no, if you build the road here, it'll disrupt the natural flow of water here, and this will cause a flood. So you can't build here. Yeah. So taking those things into considerations, because we don't live on those islands, so we don't know where the water is actually going to run off to and how that's going to impact the community. So that really helps with creating effective plans and strategies.
How the international cooperation works around you guys? There are other countries that support, or your experience is supporting other countries?
Although Dorian was a tragedy for us, there were a lot of lessons learned on how to be better. So when Dorian happened, we got huge support from the international world and the international organizations. We saw a flood of support, flood of assistance in the response part, and then even in some of the recovery part. So we know that our partners are there to really provide that assistance. But now we can kind of frame how that assistance really works for us in the best ways, because everybody wants to reach out and help. And if you let people come and help and they're building houses, sometimes they don't know, okay, if you want to build a house, you have to build it up to the building code. And they wouldn't know, but they're just eager to help. So with this new legislation, it allows us to guide our international partners and resources into more effective disaster management strategies and more effective initiatives and programs, so we can truly benefit from the recovery and the resilience that they want to partner with. And I think it's great because having them at the table and understanding that we have a clear agenda on how we can be better in disaster management also gives them more clear outlines and guidances on how best to support us. So it's great.
And you were saying about when the incident happened, the families that were receiving orders in their house and the solidarity.
Yes.
Among the population.
It was just a beautiful thing to see, having that shared experience of trauma and having people that you may have known about, you've seen them in the neighborhood, you've seen them around, but you've never really interacted for. That experience really brought everyone together and it made them empowered to help everybody, because this is your culture and your community. So people were sharing resources, people were sharing homes, whatever they had with each other, because we really are all that we have. And it really takes the community effort to survive the impact, because this is your safety net, your social safety net, and it's really important to tap into that. Disaster management is really all of us. It is an inclusive approach. It is a whole of society approach. It is a whole of government approach as well. But it's important to understand our capabilities, work within our capabilities, work within our safety social nets. And I think it's important to establish those social safety nets. So if you are in isolated communities, really learn your neighbor, depend on your neighbor to be there for each other in case of an event happens, and you know who to go to, where to go to for that social support as well. It's more about focusing on the community or localized approach to disaster management. And that's what I'm really learning from all of this.
Super. Yes. Many thanks.
Yes.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.